Hello everyone and welcome back to Intro to College Chem. Today we're going to be doing significant figures with multiplication and division. So the rule is that significant figures are determined by the value with least significant figures, both for multiplication and division, and that process does not change. Do note that it's not the same process as addition and subtraction. And if you'd like to see that process, there's a whole video on it, which you can see the card now or the link in the description. Anyway, let's get started. So now that we know what the rule is, here I have some examples, and in green I have put what the result that you would get from the calculator. So as you can see here, let's look at what we're multiplying, and it's 0.93, as we can know that it's two significant figures, and then here 0.70, which is two significant figures as well. So when you put in the calculator, it's going to be 0.0651. Now, in this case, both of them have the same amount of significant figures, so there's no one we're going to prefer to. But we know since there's two in both the factors that we're using, then our product must also have two significant figures as the result. So here in the calculator, we get 0.651. So we're going to have to round that 1 down to just the 5 to make our answer, our final answer that is, to be 0.65, and that would be our final answer in the correct amount of significant figures. So let's carry that same process onto the next one. Here, if we count yet again, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 sig figs, and then here we just have 1 and 2. So in this case, we're going to have to go by the least, right? So our final answer should have 2, like this one that has the least. So the calculator gives us 2225. So we're going to actually have we have two options here when it comes to the correct sig figs. The easier option is to just round down to two significant figures. So that would be like rounding all the way like this, which is 22, and you have your sig figs, and then put a 0 and a 0. And as long as you don't put a decimal place there, that is technically just two significant figures because there's no decimal place here. If you put the decimal place there, then that doesn't count, and that answer wouldn't count. Now the answer, or the way of answering I do recommend though, is just using scientific notation, and if you're not familiar with it, there will be a video on it too in the link or the card above and in the description. So in terms of scientific notation, I recommend this because it allows you to be more precise with your answers, and it's usually the preferred method from professors. So as you can see, we're going to round down to 2, which would be here 2.2, right? We're going to bring that decimal place all the way here, and we had to move over 1, 2, 3 times, so our answer here is going to be 2.2 times 10 to the third, and that would be our final answer. Both these options here have two sig figs, so they're both correct. So those are two ways you can do it, but I recommend, like I said, just use scientific notation. No matter if it's less than 1 or way greater than 1, it's probably the best option and the most accurate that you're going to get. Anyway, let's continue with the same process here. As we can see, we have two sig figs, and then here we have 3. So we're going to have to go for the one with the least. So 0.93, that's 2 sig figs. Our answer should have the same. The calculator gives us 3.8595. So again, we're just going to have to, easiest thing to do is to just round here. So we can just round to 3.9. And that would be our final answer with the correct sig figs. And don't be too worried about if you have to round a lot. Trust me, as long as you know that you're going by the correct sig figs, you don't have to worry about too much, because I've always had the habit of adding too many significant figures to be more precise, or to not be off. But if you just round correctly, the professor will always give you the right amount of points, knowing that you did the process correctly. All right, so now let's do some examples with some units, so we can get that going like as if it was an actual question. All right, so we have 401 or 401.05, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sig figs, and then here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so the least would be 4, so our answer should have 4. If you do the calculation in the calculator, you get this big number here. On the you don't have to write down the whole thing. On the calculator, you can already round in your head to the nearest 4 decimal place. So the one we need to end off here is the 5, but we see that the next one is a 6, so we're going to have to round up. And in this case, our answer is going to be 12.76 with 4 significant figures rounding up this 5 right here. So yeah, that would be our final answer with correct sig figs. But do not forget, like I almost just did again, to put your units. And the way I like to set it up, or seeing it, is as we're seeing that it's going to be mole. It's going to be mole divided by liters, and of course these units are not like cancelable or anything, so it would just be like that. So our final unit will be mole over liter, and that would be your final answer. All right, so let's do the same thing for this next one, which is division, which is 506.9 divided by 0.85. We can already see right away that this one has the less amount of significant figures, so our final answer should only have 2. So in our answer, we get 596.35, etc., etc., etc. We already know that we only need 2. So in this case, best thing to do would be to use scientific notation. And our 2 would be 5 point, actually no, we have to round up this, this 9 here because there's a 6 right after it. So our rounding up, we'd end up with 6.0. 6.0, and then we can do the normal scientific notation. So we have 1 and 2. We move 2 places, 1 and 2, like that. So it would be 6.0 times 10 to the second. Don't forget your units yet again. And in this case, it would be grams divided by milliliters. Again, those do not cancel, so it would just be grams over ml, and that's your final answer. It can be a little tricky when it comes to rounding, especially if the second number is a 9 and you have to round up the first number as well. But as you can see, if you just stick to your normal rounding rules, you're gonna be fine. So let's move on to this last example, which is 78.1 grams per milliliter times 26 milliliters. In this case, the units do cancel, but let's get to that after. Right away, we can see that this one has 2 sig figs and this one has 3. So our answer should only have 2 because that's the least. And the calculator gives us 2030.6. So we're going to have to use scientific notation yet again, and that would be 2.0 because this 3 does not round up, it rounds down. So 2.0, and we move a total of 1, 2, 3 times. So the answer here is going to be 2.0 times 10 to the 3, and now we have a situation where we can actually cancel out our units here. So we have milliliters divided by milliliters, and that's going to cancel out right there. So we're just left with grams. So our total answer is going to be 2.0 times 10 to the third grams. And there you go. Now let's move forward and let's actually do an example now that we know multiplication, division, and addition and subtraction. Remember that, like I said prior, the system is not the same for addition and subtraction. Be sure to check that video out if you're not sure how to do that. But this addition and subtraction system works by going off the least precise based on the decimal place. So in this case, as we can see, the least precise, well, they're all the same precision because they're all 1 to the right of the decimal place. So here's 0.3, 0.0, and 0.2. So our final answer should have 1 decimal place to the right, like here. If you do 178.3 plus 9 minus 82, because 8.2 times 10 is 82, then your answer should be 105.3. And then you make sure you end off on 0.3, like I said prior, because that's the same precision as these right here. Because the system for addition and subtraction is different. Now that we have just this system here where it's just division, we can go back to what we just learned, which is just go by the least amount of significant digits, and in this case it's the 3.56, which only has 3, compared to this number up here, which has 4. The calculator gives us this big number here, but since we know we only need 3, we can actually just round it to 29.6, and that would be our final answer with the correct significant digits. So there you go. Even when you have both addition and subtraction, as long as you know or are able to differentiate between the two different systems, you should be more than fine. So now let's give one last little example in kinds of like a word problem, like you would see on your actual exams and etc. This is just very simple with cookies, but the system applies the same. So let's say you have 12.0 boxes of cookies with 3.74 cookies in each. Calculate the total cookies with the correct significant figures. So we know we have to multiply to find the total cookies, but the whole point here is to find the right significant figures. And in this case, this first number, 12.0, that they gave us has 1, 2, and 3 sig figs. The second thing, the second option also has 3, or the second value I mean, which is 3.74. So we know that we don't have to prefer one specifically in this case, but our total significant figures in our answer should be 3. The calculator gives us 44.88, which is 4 sig figs, so we need to round off 1, and our final answer should be 44, it should be 44.9 in this case, to have 3 sig figs, and that'll be our total amount of cookies. So 44.9 cookies and the correct amount of significant figures. So again, just remember to know the difference between the systems for multiplication and division and addition and subtraction, and you should be more than fine. So good luck.